Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Todd and Kelly here from the Kindy Fam. So as promised, I would explain to you why we are in the process of getting ready to trying to conceive. You know, you may think that you come to the decision that, okay, we're ready to start trying, we're ready to have a baby, that you just go off of your birth control and start trying. And for some people that may be the case, but there were a couple of things related to my health that I felt like I should address, or at least talk to my doctor about before we took the plunge. And so I sent our family doctor, we have the same family doctor, so I sent her a message and just told her that we were talking about family planning and I would just like to have a virtual visit with her to go over medications that I'm taking and, you know, best approach to going off the pill and just, you know, a couple of other things. And so we sat down together, Todd and I, and we made our list of questions, especially since we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so there's that added into your normal trying to conceive or family planning discussions. So, you know, we had a whole list of questions related to COVID in terms of, can he go to doctor's appointments? What happens if one of us tests positive day of delivery? It's scary. There's a lot of unknowns, and I think especially being a first-time mom, it's probably even scarier. Made the appointment, had our list of questions. Obviously, it's going to differ by your area, probably even your providers or your hospitals, but for our area right now, they're not allowing anyone in for any appointments. So that's ultrasounds, even if you're high risk, like you can't go in, period. And then in terms of testing positive, if that were to happen, you know, if he were to test positive, he would not be allowed in for the delivery. If I were to test positive, my doctor's words were, you're a part of the equation that you can't take out, so like you have to be there at the hospitals, or there's not really anything they can do. So you know, they'll obviously keep you and treat you and deliver the baby, but Todd would not be able to be there. So for me, that's scary. And then some other questions we had that were related to my health specifically and not pandemic related were that I have an anxiety disorder, and I was diagnosed with a panic anxiety disorder back in 2017. It was something that I had no idea I had. I didn't know that's what I was experiencing at the time, and I can go into more detail for anyone that suffers from panic and anxiety. It sucks, just to put it bluntly. It sucks. So that could be another video where we can go in and talk in more detail about that if anyone wants it. But, you know, I do take medication daily for it, and that's something I wanted to check on. You know, is it something that's safe to take during pregnancy? If it's something safe to take if you're breastfeeding, all of that stuff. So luckily for me, the medication that I do take, which is the generic for Lexapro, it is safe to take during pregnancy. My doctor did say that it does transfer or cross over the placenta, so the baby would, I guess, get some of the medicine. And so the only thing to consider would be like maybe going into your third trimester or close to delivery, if you felt like you could wean down on your dosage, that's not a bad idea. But the studies haven't shown any. There's been no conclusive studies that show any major harm to a baby for taking Lexapro. I think that you're trying to find the balance between the mom's mental health, because that also impacts the baby, and then medicine that gets, you know, crossed over the placenta to the baby. And so, you know, for me, we know that I have to stay on it. Whether or not I can go down on my dose will be something that we just have to play by ear. As far as, you know, what my body could tolerate for reducing my dosage as I would enter into a third trimester. But I do find comfort in knowing that it's not something that is going to cause harm to the baby, and it also gives me, as someone who has anxiety, peace of mind knowing that I don't have to go off of the medicine that makes me feel like a normal human being. There's enough stress and unknown going into trying to have a baby anyway, so to take off that piece is just huge for me. The second piece of health issues that we wanted to discuss is that in August of 2020, I went for my yearly physical with my family doctor, and just like every other woman, I do self-breast examinations, and from time to time I feel, you know, a lumpy spot. I'm sure many people do. And so I had felt one on my right breast, and so when I went in, I told her about it. She also did her own breast exam on me, agreed that she could feel it, and said, you know, we're just gonna go and do an ultrasound of it. I'll send you over for an ultrasound, have it checked out. It's probably nothing, but you know, better safe than sorry. And let me preface this to say that the reason that she wanted me to have it checked out is because I do have a history of having benign cysts, and I believe they're called, medical gurus don't come after me, fibroadenomas, I think. But I've had a history of having those before. The earliest one being when I think I was 15 years old, I actually ended up having to have it biopsied out of my left breast because it wasn't changing in the way that they thought it should. And so they did the biopsy. It was benign. Everything was totally fine. And then I did not have any more of these lumps until I was in my 20s probably. And in the last 3 years, I've had 2 that have led to having to have an ultrasound. And so, you know, the first one, I felt it, doctor felt it. She says, okay, let's go get the ultrasound. I go for the ultrasound. They look and they're like, you know what? I feel what you're feeling. I know what you're talking about, but it's just normal breast tissue. You have more fibrous breast tissue than normal. So that one was totally fine. That was 2 to 3 years, probably 2.5 years ago. And so in August, when I went for my physical, I told my doctor, hey, I've got another one of these places. She checks it out. She says, yep, we'll send you for another ultrasound. Probably nothing. So I went the following month in September, at the end of September, and I actually got a little concerned because when they called to schedule my appointment, they confirmed me for a mammogram and an ultrasound. And at the time, I was 30 years old, so I had never had a mammogram. I, of course, had had an ultrasound before, but I had never had a mammogram. Was absolutely terrified of having a mammogram because, you know, I don't know if I've just heard horror stories or what, but I was prepared for very uncomfortable and, you know, just that process being unpleasant on top of, okay, why am I having to have a mammogram this time when I haven't before? So I go back, they do the mammogram, and it was a piece of cake. Like, lady was super sweet, super gentle, nothing was even uncomfortable. I got out of there and was like, okay, I have myself all worked up for literally nothing. Like, it was nothing. So that part was great. The part that did get me worked up was that the technician said, we're gonna do the mammogram. The radiologist is gonna read the scans, and if she sees anything of concern, she'll take you back for an ultrasound. Cool. 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes, whatever, they come out and they're like, hey, you know, we're gonna take you over here for the ultrasound. Panic starts to set in, right? Like, oh, if they see anything concerning, they'll take you for an ultrasound. Okay, let's go for an ultrasound. Doesn't sound great, right? So, bottle of nerves at this point. Go back, she does the ultrasound, and I'm watching the screen as she's doing this, and I can see a lump, And the place that she is moving the ultrasound little wand thing over is not the place where I have said I felt something. And so I say, hey, you know, I felt something over here. She's like, okay, let me finish checking this spot. And I'm like, oh gosh. So she finishes, she goes, she checks the spot that I mentioned, and she's like, no, that's normal breast tissue. And I'm like, okay. Whew. Normal again, that's great. What were you doing over here on this side, you know? She said, well, there was a spot that showed up in the mammogram, and so we are going to get some better images of it with the ultrasound, because the ultrasound can show more than the mammogram, and we're going to have the radiologist come in and talk to you. And by this point, like, my stomach is just like in my butt basically. And she finishes, and luckily it wasn't long before the radiologist came in, and she was super sweet, and she said, listen, you know, you do have this spot. We don't know what it is. You know, you can't tell. We see that there is a mass, and it's very small given your age and the fact that you've had these fibroadenomas before. That's probably what it is, but I want you to come back in 6 months, and we're going to do another ultrasound and see if it has changed in size any. If it hasn't, that's awesome. I'll have you come back in 1 year from that date. We'll check it again. If it hasn't changed any, awesome, we're done. We're going to write it off as that's just part of your breast. If you come back in 6 months and it has changed, we're going to go ahead and biopsy it and see what it is. So, obviously, the preference would be that I go for the 6-month scan. They say no change, and then I'm good for another year. My doctor just said that, you know, because it was in a place that it's not normally in, meaning like I usually can feel my lumps, and this one is kind of like deep in the breast where I can't feel it myself. And we're already, you know, I went September 25th for the mammogram and ultrasound. So we're already 4 months into that 6-month follow-up. It's like we should, or not 4 months, we're 3 months, I'm sorry, we're 3 months into that 6-month follow-up. She's like, I'd be comfortable if you went for a 5-month instead of a 6-month follow-up, but I do want you to wait and go for that follow-up. Because on the slim chance, and she did say slim, on the slim chance that it is something that has changed and we need to biopsy, if it's something that needs to be treated, if you are pregnant, your options go from, you know, we have a million things we can do for you to we have this handful of things that we can do for you. And so when you're saying chances are it's nothing, but if you can wait 2 months to go and get it checked out for that peace of mind, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's only 2 months. And if it's something that my doctor is saying she wants me to do, then I trust her, and she's my doctor for a reason. So obviously we're going to go with her recommendation and her advice, and we are going to wait to go for that follow-up scan, just for everyone's peace of mind that it is nothing like we all think that it is. And then we can go into trying without having that kind of lingering over our head, or like bad juju or anything. So basically I have 2 months to cram in some things that maybe we want to do before we start trying, or feel like we need to do before we start trying. And you know, that's not the end of the world either. So I think that we're gonna just take this time to really soak in moments with Emma and with each other. You know, yesterday being potentially our last Christmas that would ever be just the two of us for many, many, many years. You know, just really soaking that in and enjoying it. And then obviously there are things that we feel like we should prepare for. So the big thing would be finances. Babies are not cheap, and there are so many expenses related to having a baby. I mean, from the time that you find out you're pregnant until forever. So 2 months is not a long time to prepare for a whole lot of stuff, but it is enough time for us to squeeze in a few fun things together and, you know, look at cost of different things like daycare or, you know, change in cost of insurance and stuff like that. I'm a huge planner, I'm a huge budgeter, so being financially prepared is super important to me for my sanity, and there's a lot that I just don't know. So we've got 2 months.